Hey everybody, Bobby Chiu here. So last year I had pretty much like the most horrible time at this convention. I was supposed to do a workshop, felt super unappreciated by the organization, so I ended up canceling the workshop. But I did say to the attendees that I would do the workshop for free, some way, somehow. And then I came up with an idea. I was also approached by an organization, a lovely organization in Puerto Rico, that asked me to give a couple, kind words to their artists there. And so I said, instead of doing that, I would like to give them a free workshop, same workshop I was going to give at this other convention that will not be named. So here we go. Free workshop for you guys. Creativity as a professional. This is my talk that I gave to these wonderful artists in Puerto Rico. Please enjoy. What do? I make creatures. I work on characters for usually movies, but I've also created my own TV show that has done very well. So I know many things, I guess. And throughout the talk, at the end of the talk, we'll have a nice section for questions. And you can ask me whatever you want, And then right after this, I'm off to plane and I'm going to Florence. So this is going to be a very quick, but a lot of information, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you have a question, definitely ask. Because one thing that I've learned over my, 20 plus years being a professional artist, opportunities don't last forever. So you got to always grab it when it's there. Okay, so you ready? Excellent. Now the mic is a little, it's a little soft on my side. I can't hear everybody super, super clearly. So when you do have a question, make sure that you speak clearly. Okay? So here we go. So creativity as a profession. Nowadays, wow, the level of art that people do is incredible. The level of technical accuracy is amazing. Now, what's going to differ all of these thousands of artists from you? That's your creativity. And that's what people come to me for. They come to me, they give me the really fun, cool jobs because they want my ideas. And that's what I want to pass on to you guys. How I come up with my ideas. I want to show you a few different ways, okay? And talk about ideas a bit, because when you think about it, you watch YouTube, you look at your Instagram, whatever, the things that get tens of thousands, 100,000 views, millions of views, a lot of times they aren't technically brilliant, but the creativity is very good and very infectious. And so that's why ideas trump technical skills. Ideas are better than technical skills. Of course, nowadays you kind of need both. Okay, so using research and reference, but still being creative and original. And what I mean by this is a lot of times what people do is when they do research or reference, they're looking for the exact copy, right? And then they would kind of paint it or photo bash it or whatever exactly like the reference. That's not our job. If that was that easy, then none of us would have these jobs, because all of the jobs would go to photocopiers, right? So I want to give you an example of one of my, how I study, how I use the research, how I use the reference. Okay, so let me show you an example. One of my favorite painters in the world is this guy. Frederick Remington. He's the one that I've been obsessed about for the last year and a half. He died a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, but he's gone now. The cool thing about his paintings, the things that I love about his paintings, are his nighttime scenes. The way that he depicts nighttime is amazing. It's so good. It's something I'd never seen before. Because back then, they didn't have cameras that could take pictures at night. This is his interpretation. So a lot of times what we do as artists is we look at a beautiful painting like this and we go, wow, so amazing. I'm going to copy it, which is great. You copy it. We all copy it. And then when we're done, we go, okay, we're done. On to the next painting. No. Did you learn anything? That's what I'm always asking myself. Did you actually learn anything when you were copying this painting? Because if you weren't, then you didn't get the full information. You didn't actually learn anything. You just painted. You might as well paint a wall. How I learn is I will paint this, and then I will delete the old one and paint it again. And then tomorrow, once in the morning, I would paint it again without looking at it. So if I know that I'm going to paint it tomorrow without looking at it, then I'll make sure that I try to understand exactly what I'm painting this time, when I am looking at it. And then you paint it while looking at it again. And over and over. And then once you feel like you really understand it, then you might paint something like this, where you're not looking at it, right? If you look at the colors are different than the nighttime colors that Frederick Remington used. Because this was out of my head. But how many times do we copy something without actually getting all of the information? When I see somebody eat a part of the chicken wing, the chicken wing has 3 parts. It has the drumstick part, it has the part with the 2 wings, and then it has the tip. And the thing that frustrates me is when people eat the drumstick a little bit, they don't eat the meat between the 2 bones, and they don't eat the tip. This is exactly like painting a painting and then leaving without getting everything out of it. What a waste. You know what I mean? Nod your head if you know what I mean. Okay, great. So after this, what do? Do I move on? No, I paint another one. And another one, and another one, until I truly absorb everything about this painting. So this is painting an object that I have in my room, and I put it in this fantasy place and tried to paint a nighttime scene again, inspired by Frederick Remington. When you look at really great masters from museums and things like that, the thing that I found to be the biggest difference is how much boring shit they did. They have done a lot of boring stuff. For every painting that they'll do, they might do 20 little sketches, right? 20 little paintings before the big painting. Yet we're not as masters as them. How many little paintings do you do before you're finished painting? Maybe 1, I'm guessing, right? If we practice the way that the top level people do, then we will get to those levels. Otherwise, I don't think you can. Now, the other thing about this is a lot of times we're searching for our own style, our own voice. Well, how do we get that? Well, we could look at nothing and just work on our own and try to come up with our own voice. But that's not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen well. Art is is an interpretation of life. In some way or another, even abstract art is an interpretation of life in some way. Maybe it's an emotion or something like that. Good art is good interpretations of life. How somebody looked at all of this complex stuff and only used 3 brushstrokes to describe it. The mountain in the background is just one color. You know, it's simplified. It's this beautiful interpretation of life. So if we want to become original and we want to become creative, first we learn how other people interpret life in beautiful ways. Then when you're done that, you learn somebody else, a new person, how to interpret life in their way. One of my favorite artists, I love watching his art and everything, is Sergey Kol. He's incredible. He interprets life very differently from Frederick Remington. So when you finish learning how one person thinks, you learn how another person thinks. Creativity is the connection that you find between 2 different things. The best creativity comes from the connection that you find between 2 different things. So, for example, typography, right? The art of type, and then computers. And the connection in between creates a creative interface that makes Apple completely different from all the other, computers. Same thing with art. When you're studying a great artist and you really, really study them, and then you move on to another artist and you see, how do they draw the same group of muscles? Oh, it's different. What is the connection there? That's where originality, that's where real great creativity comes from. You see this in movies as well. Toy Story 3, this connection between toys and the mafia. That's what it was, right? You got the bad toys that was like the mafia. And then you got the other toys. And then the connection in between of mafia and toys becomes Toy Story 3, and it's brilliant. I love it. Okay, so I took Sergey Kol's stuff, and what I liked about it was the flowers and how all the flowers are so close to the people, and it really creates this nice space, like sense of space and composition. And from here, I did this. So it's really just a sketchy thing where it's like this kind of unicorn creature that has fur or whatever, very much like flowers. And it's walking through a flowery, gardeny kind of area. So it's taking from Sergey Kol's, but it's not doing it in a way that hopefully, if he saw this, he would be like, okay, yeah, you're copying me. Hopefully it's not like that, right? Hopefully he looks at it and goes, okay, yeah, that's different. That's cool. That's what you're looking for. So let me show you some other examples here. Here's one that I really liked from Sergey again. What I liked about this was the dark values of that middle shape of all those characters. The dark value and the light value of that middle shape, they're very close together. And then you have these cars. So what I did was, I've been really exploring the idea of unicorns. So what I did was these 1950s cars surrounding this big unicorn, right? And this is the big unicorn right here. And then there's these people that have tried to capture this unicorn and also has their little unicorn child. And it's sad. Might make you even a little angry. But that was my idea from Sergey's stuff. Here's another one that I love this one. This one's so cool. Why? Because first you notice the truck, and you only notice the truck. Later on, you notice the woman lying on the ground. It's like, wow, that's really cool. I could barely see her. Now I see her. And then you see the gun. That's really cool. You know, it tells the story. And it's in this timing of like, I don't see the woman right away. I'm starting to search for the story. You know, so I did this. Inspired by Sergey's stuff. First, you see the big bones of the giant unicorn. Then, hopefully, you see the archaeologist, the scientist standing there. Then, hopefully, if you look a little further, you see the little tools and you see a little fairy skeleton with a spear. What happened there? I'll show you one more example from Sergey. So it could be something like this. And what I liked about this was the exposure, the level of exposure of light versus shadow. The things in light almost become white. I kind of like that, so I did this. It's a big Frankenstein kind of unicorn thing with a little, looks like a smarter little unicorn leader in the front, right? And the light really whites out. And that's it. You know, so that's how I tend to use reference. That's how I tend to use research. It's very much for inspiration. It's not for copying. Because anybody can get somebody to copy things. If you're known for your ideas, nobody can substitute you. Nobody could take away your jobs. Now, how do you do this? How do you become creative? Always be on. And what does that mean? That means, you know, when I had the privilege of doing a talk with one of my heroes, Glenn Keane, recently won an Oscar, right? I was in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm doing a talk with him, but we got to hang out for a couple of days, you know, and I'm having dinner with him. And he starts to talk about the waiter and how the waiter moves around and his mannerisms and things like that. And I was like, wow, he really described so many subtle things that I wouldn't have noticed. His behavior, the waiter's behavior. And I was like thinking, wow, like how did he notice that? And I asked him and he said, he's always noticing. He is always on. He is always noticing how everybody moves, how everybody, you know, just lives. Craig Mullins, I was having a breakfast. I'm totally name dropping. I'm so sorry. But I was having breakfast with the master, Craig Mullins, digital painting. He's having breakfast. He's looking out into distance. We're sitting on top of the CN Tower. It's this beautiful view. And he just keeps looking at this blue of the water. And that was it. You know, he's like, he just kept staring. And then I'm like, what are you looking at? Oh, that blue in the water. It's really cool. I'm going to remember that. He's always on. Some friends I know, they can look at a color, they can look at something in life and tell you what the HSB would be in the color sliders of Photoshop. Always on. All right. So here are some images, and I'll talk about them a little bit. Always trying to change my style, always just trying to get more knowledge and doing it in a fun way. So this image right here, this was about edges. You know, you can see very crisp edges, very clear edges, and then you can see fuzzier edges. I think one thing that makes this illustration cool for me For me anyways, it's this stuff back here where the branches start to fade. The edges are not really crisp. They're not really there. And it creates this wonderful space, this wonderful sense of three-dimensionality, and having these branches really come at you. And they really come at you also because of these soft edges in the background. And the other thing I was really looking for to learn from this is just the idea of traditional drawing, the old way where it's with like etching almost, cross-hatching. I feel like this next decade is going to be the decade where we're going to really appreciate the traditional stuff even more. Okay, and then this is a traditional painting. This is a acrylic painting. It's called Walk This Way. And so it's kind of inspired a little bit by just leadership, politics, things like that. No country in specific, but just who are we following? Do they know where they're going? And so I painted this, and I called it Walk This Way. This one is a digital painting. But the thing I did with this one is that it had a 3D base, and then I painted over top of it. Right? So if you're constantly learning, when you think about the things that kind of connect between one thing that you learned, maybe sculpting, versus painting, all of a sudden things change and your art will have the biggest evolutions when that kind of stuff happens. Okay, the second one, the importance of emotional impact. What is the point of art? That's a pretty high-level question, but I have my own answer, and that is to move people, to create emotion in people. The highest, your favorite movies, for example, did they make you feel anything? Of course. If it didn't make you feel anything, any kind of emotions, no matter how cool that movie looked, it kind of sucked in your mind, and you probably wouldn't want to watch it again. So emotions is the thing that really pushes people to like your art, and that's what I kind of determine good art to be. The best art, the best films, are the ones that changes a person. You know, like when I saw Star Wars for the first time and Yoda, Yoda changed me. When I watched The Matrix for the first time, The Matrix changed me. Neo changed me. The second one, not as much, but the first one for sure. Now I'm going to show you a couple of these images, and I'm going to kind of tell you why I felt that they were successful, or maybe why they weren't successful, okay? This one was very successful for me. This was called Making Friends. And what's the point of this one? This is this guy that doesn't look as maybe pretty or clean or whatever, and is trying to give one of his flowers to the other plant people. So it's kind of like this, aw, kind of moment, hopefully, for some of you. That is a very powerful emotion. That aw emotion. Think about your Instagram. Think about the things that you share. Think about those things where you just like, aw, those puppy dogs, it wears a little hat or whatever. I'm going to send this to, 5 of my friends. That's a very powerful emotion.
Like, you started off talking about basically how to do studies, and I was wondering, how do you approach a painting other than just repeating it? What's your thought process when you go into, I'm going to study this painting? how I'm gonna break it down and build it up as I like copy it, and then later on add my own touch. Like basically, how do you go about studying the paintings that you know practice with?
Oh, okay. How do I go about studying the paintings that I practice with? Well, let me see if I get this right. Okay, so for Frederick Remington, for example, I was looking at a certain aspect of his paintings, right? The nighttime scenes. And so when I am studying it, I'm eye dropping, for example. I'm eye dropping. I'm thinking about what the color is. I eye drop it, see if it's close, see what the relationship between the color of the water in the foreground is from the sky, from the wolf, from the water in the background. And really trying to make sense of it all. Why does it get more saturated as it's getting darker? How much does a hue change? And I try to create rules for myself in this painting, in this universe, right, that I'm studying. And then I try to apply the same rules to my own painting. So all of a sudden, it doesn't really matter if I have a lighter value in my new painting, as long as the relationships aren't broken. So in other words, if the foreground elements get darker than the background elements, it doesn't matter if I make it even darker in my version or slightly lighter in my version. As long as the foreground doesn't become lighter than the background, I haven't broken that relationship, right? So that's very specific, but that's the way that I would study for research. And for my own films and stuff that I work on, I would study inspiration and I would start to create rules for myself so that I'd be able to apply it to original things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you very much.
All right, great. So this one is a painting, Piranha Puppy and the Mushroom Kid. So we're talking about emotions. Emotions is what really moves people, what really connects people with art and with just things in general. So what do you think the emotion is here? It's going to be like a kind of funny emotion, but also like aw kind of thing because it's cute and it's getting chased, and if it gets caught, it's going to be in big trouble. So you're going to like kind of laugh at it. It's kind of cute, right? Let's go to the next one. Okay, so next one, same kind of thing, different emotion though. Why is this one a different emotion than the other one? Because this one, the monster that's chasing is not cute anymore. So you get more of this like, whoa kind of feeling, hopefully, right? Like this kind of like an awe-inspiring feeling, but just more like, whoa, that's exciting. It's kind of dangerous, hopefully. And then the cute little guy hopefully makes you go a little bit like, aw, I hope that thing doesn't die. This is definitely an awe kind of feeling. Like hopefully you look at it and you're, aw. So the idea behind this was every few years, Kay Asadera and we go to Paris and we live there for like a month or so, month and a half, and we'll just paint every day. And then at the end of our trip, we'll have a gallery show. So this was one of those gallery show pieces. This night, when I'm painting this painting, it was raining outside, it was wet, but I felt great because I was alone in Paris with my wife and it was just wonderful and we're just painting. So it inspired me to paint this. It's acrylic, but I wanted to just try something that you don't usually try, which is you water down your acrylics. But since it was a rainy day, it kind of made sense to me. And then I just painted this and I thought it was good. So, I finished it and put it in the gallery. A painting has a really good emotional impact. It will sell right away. And this one sold, it was one of like the first to sell. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Big Bad Bunny Eater. Right? And so what's the story behind this? It's kind of obvious, but the story behind the idea is that I want the viewer to look, and then just like the truck that fell over with the woman with the gun, you don't get the story right away. I want you to look at it and then go, oh, ha 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 ha, like that kind of thing. And a lot of times, when you think about it, those like, oh, kind of moments, you feel like you achieved something. And by human nature, anytime that you've achieved something, think back to your past. You know, have you ever won anything? Have you ever won a ribbon in anything or a trophy? You're going to tell people. That's the natural behavior of humans. So I'm going to give you that, oh, kind of moment where it's like you figured it out. Good job, you achieved something. And when you achieve something, you're going to tell your friend, you're going to be like, hey, Diego, come take a look at this. Do you get it? And then Diego's going to look at it and go, oh, ha ha ha, you know, and the cycle continues. This one, I painted this for my mom. It's called A Mother's Love, you know, and I'm pretty much all those leeches on her and her eternal love for me. You know, that's what I tried to show with this. But if you were to buy this painting, where would you put it? I don't know. And a lot of times when you know where you would put that painting, you know you have a good painting and it's going to sell a lot. And I think I like the idea for this. So on the internet, it did well. But as a print, it didn't do well. You know, because you're looking at it and you're like, where would I put this? I like the idea, but would I want to put this on my wall? Not really. This one, where would you put this one? In the washroom, probably. You know, something fun to stare at while you're having your alone time. So this one did well. You know, it's cute. He's kind of dumb looking. And a lot of times when there's a cute thing that's dumb, it's actually cuter, isn't it? When you see like a cute puppy and it's just so dumb. Like, just get out of the box. You don't know how to get out of the box. That's really funny. Popsicle unicorn. You know, I was in, where was I? I was in LA and I came back to Toronto. It's the winter during that time. So I'm going from eating popsicles to frigid cold winter. A lot of times when you're thinking of ideas and you're trying to think of something creative, a lot of times a good thing is to kind of think of words and think of words that relate to words, and then you grab two of them and you try to put them together. So for example, traveling. This is what was going through my head, right? Traveling. Los Angeles. Sunny. Shorts. T-shirt. Great weather. Cold drinks. Ice. Icy treats. Popsicle. Popsicle. Cold. Toronto. Winter. And then I just took winter. Popsicle. Stuck them together, made a unicorn. I know that's a very simple sounding kind of method, but it's actually a very helpful one to come up with creative ideas. You know, dark, scary, spider webs, spider, whole bunch of legs, whole bunch of eyes. Bugs, eats bugs, small creatures, small cute creatures, bunny, carrot, bunny, spider, eats a bug. Sometimes I just paint, you know, and I just keep painting, and then I look at it and I try to look at it from a stranger's point of view, and is it hitting the emotional mark that I want? You know, how do I want the viewer to feel about it, and do they feel about it yet? So at first it was just a tiger, and it didn't really do anything for me. It didn't really mean anything to me. And then I put the little guy on the branch, and I was like, you know, the idea behind this painting is that there are people out there that care about us. You know, we just don't know, but they're out there and they do care. just like, hearing about everything that's happened in Puerto Rico and everything, that really struck a chord to me, and especially to, my friend Carla Ortiz that I was telling you about, because she still has family in Puerto Rico. So this kind of symbolizes that idea that there are people there that care about us. Let's go on to the next one. Creating ideas with others. Now, one thing when you're working with a client is that you don't want to create something as a surprise for them, or you don't want to think about it as like, I'm going to create this thing by myself. I'm going to give them the idea and I'm going to create the whole entire painting by myself and give it to them. The best way to do things is to work with somebody to create something, right? Even if they're not an artist, if they feel somewhat involved, then that's really good. That's really good for your business. That's really good for your relationships. Because if somebody hires you and you create something amazing and the person that hired you had nothing to do with it, okay, that's good. But say somebody hires you and then that person tells you about what he or she likes or does not like. You create something, you show them in rough, and then that person gives you feedback again, and then you come back with the finished thing. That person that hired you is going to have a way better time, a way more fun time, working with you. Also, when you're always going over the idea with that person won't say no as much, because essentially in the end they would be saying no to their own idea, right? Because they helped to create it with you. So this is the sketch that I gave to Tim Burton for the first Alice in Wonderland for the dog character. You can see that's very little tones. I started off with the background tone. I had a very close to black color, and I had a lighter blue color. And I just switch with X in Photoshop back and forth, and I paint this thing real quick, right? And I want it to look quick too, because I don't want Tim to think that that I spent too much time on it. I want the director to feel like, okay, I got an idea, I whipped it out as quick as I could, and I got it back to them. I want feedback. Once they give the feedback and they say it's good, then I did this. And you can see that the sketch is very close to the finished image. What he said in his feedback was that he wanted the pattern there, the dark parts of the fur and everything. Right? So when he saw this finished one, he said, it's perfect. It's approved. Now, the other thing about this painting is that there is an emotional impact there. Directors know that they're trying to move their audience. So the emotional impact, the pose, the lighting and everything, it's to also show the emotion that this character will give to the audience. That's very important. This is the Boro Grove. So the Boro Grove is actually from an older Alice in Wonderland illustration. So you don't always have to create ideas with the producer, the director, the art director. You can create ideas with other artists, even, artists that aren't here anymore, because that's what art is. It's a conversation. When you think about it in the grand scheme of things, art is a conversation that we've been having with other fellow artists for thousands of years. One person paints on a wall, paints a bull, Another person paints, whatever other character, whatever other creature, and then soon somebody discovers 1 point perspective. Then tells another person goes, oh, yeah, that's cool. Okay, 2 point perspective. And then so on and so forth. It's this evolution of art, right? Where we're always kind of standing on other people's shoulders and then going further and further. The dragonfly. This was the dragonfly in the movie. So the idea behind this was that it should feel like a bug, but it should also feel like a dragon. The jub bird. This is a huge bird that picks up the 2 tweedles. This one, I wanted it to feel like Tim Burton, so I put the stripes on it, which is very kind of Tim Burton-esque, high contrast patterns. As the movie goes on, as the project goes on, what I also try to do is I try to give the director rougher and rougher sketches. Why? Because then the director will feel like, wow, this person is really working fast and hard. And not wasting my time, not wasting the budget of the movie. So you can see that the dog on the right here, it's barely there. It's super rough. Right? That's done on purpose. So we can just keep going. The director's already used to my sketches and how they translate to the finished product. But you can see also the pose of that little dog on the right changed. So it's actually really nice to change little things that aren't super important, because it's showing that you're constantly thinking. You're not just trying to do a job, you're trying to really think about what is the best thing for this job. Okay, and then some vegetable guys. This is also based on the famous paintings of the portraits made of vegetables. I'm sure you know. Warrior. Another creature, and then you got the Tweedles. So this was the first Tweedle sketch that I gave to Tim Burton. Tweedledee, Tweedledum. And then he's the one that came up with the costume ideas, and to make him bald and everything, I just painted it again with a friend of mine, Jason Seiler. Now, somebody was asking about how I started painting. So I want to show you that as well. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe what I'm thinking here. So first idea is just really a creature coming out of the ground. So I set my horizon line, and I set my perspective. I did my sketch, and then I would turn on and off my sketch so that I can see what the painting looks like without the lines, because lines can be very influential in how you see the thing. Now, in the very beginning, I thought that maybe this is like kind of like a sacred animal that people worship. These little plant people worship it and give it food and stuff like that. But I felt like it got a little complex. The real story in the end is about the scoop. The horn, the unicorn horn, is functional. It's a scoop, and it scoops out the dirt so that it could dig holes. So at this point, I'm still convinced I want to make it more like the sacred animal that people are giving food to, or these other creatures are giving food to. So now I'm thinking about, like, okay, Frederick Remington. He had these very saturated blues in the shadows with the with the shrubbery, with the plants and everything. So I'm applying that. But I'm not looking at his painting. I'm just kind of going with feeling, going with logic, right? And then when that happens, that's when you're truly absorbing the information. Sketching things out real quick, and then how do we detail them? How do we detail them? I tend to shift my thinking between what is it that I'm painting and what kind of brush marks do I want to use to represent the things that I'm painting. So not just thinking in like structure and things like that, which is all very good and very great, but also thinking, how do I represent it in brush strokes? Now here, you can also see the influence of the blue in the shadows, but it's not going to be the same blue as the plants because this creature is a lot closer to us, and it's of a completely different material and base color. Right, and so I put in the blues in there. It's on a white object, so the blues won't go as dark. And an important thing here is you can see I have a small window on the left-hand side. I'm looking into that window all the time because that's going to tell me how the painting looks from far away. That's going to tell me how is the painting looking as a whole instead of just little parts. You know, a lot of times we paint into a little tiny part, and then at the end we have a shitty painting, but a really good finger or something like that, you know, and it just doesn't work. So it's important to always look at the painting as a whole. A lot of times that's very difficult when you're doing digital stuff because you're zoomed in. So I have a second window there. You can always also use a navigator window if you like. And then 2 thumbs, 3 fingers, why not? Kind of like a koala bear. Well, okay, so let me go back to the other thing that I was trying to tell you before. The thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is, you know, what is going to help out an artist more? Whether you're a jack of all trades or if you're a specialist. You know, what's the better thing to know? To know a little bit of everything or just one thing? And I feel like the answer is it doesn't matter. What really matters is the value that you bring into your work. How many people can paint or draw whatever it is at your level? If everybody can do it, then there's no value and it'll be very hard to get hired. Now, how many of you can do everything? A little bit of everything. If it's not that many, then all of a sudden being a jack of all trades, even if it's medium level, all of a sudden becomes more valuable. Unless the demand is not there. So you need to have the demand as well. You could be the best at drawing, you know, whatever thing that nobody wants, like, I don't know, like a footprint or something. You're the best at drawing footprints. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? So you still wouldn't get hired. So when it comes down to it, it is all about value. How many people can do what you do? Where are you in the top percentile of what you do? And how much demand is there? Now for me, creatures, yeah. Fantastical, whimsical creatures, hell yeah. And if they're furry, guaranteed my name is probably going to come up in the conversation when they're thinking about who to hire to create that creature. A lot of people, and nod your head when we're back, okay? Okay, we're back. Okay, let's keep this painting going. Right, so I'm painting this, the details now. All these things, you wouldn't really notice them nearly as much as all the beginning marks. And that's what I try to do. I try to be very methodical with my paintings. I try to paint the most important things first, the least important things last. That way, if the director stops me at any moment and says, "Oh my God, I have a meeting with Johnny Depp tomorrow. I need your painting done now," I could just stop and go, "Here you go." Because if you're always painting the most important things first, the least important things last, then everything will overall have this overall finish in the painting. Like, I could delete those little guys right now and hand it in. It won't be as good as my final painting, but it looks overall finished. The same amount of finish. So that becomes really helpful as well. Yeah, so in the very beginning, I'm still thinking these little guys are worshiping this creature. So you can see I'm trying to light up the creature a bit, kind of like it glows, like it's this almost like a sacred animal, like I don't know, like not from this world kind of animal. Now, the other part to this is that you can see when I start to shade something, I usually choose a tone that's very close to the tone that I'm painting on top of. So in other words, if I'm painting something that is a white object, even if my darkest shadows will go to black in the very end, the first tone that I paint with is something that's very close to white. Why? Because contrast makes imagining things harder. You ever wonder why when you're in the dark, you might be, painting at night or whatever, you're just listening to your music, painting at night, and then you think you see somebody sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. And then you turn around and you just see like, oh, it's just a baseball bat with a jacket on top and like a hat on your chair. Right? Why do we think that? Why do we see those kind of things so much more at nighttime than in the day? It's because in the day, there's all this contrast. There's all this information everywhere. So then our minds don't have to try to fill in the information, you see. But filling in the information, that's our imagination. That's what we do with the imagination. So when you're painting something with very low contrast, right? You're painting in the shadows, but the shadows are so close to the base tone of the object, then all of a sudden it's much easier to see where you want your painting to go. Another slightly different example is, have you ever had an amazing idea? You're starting off with a blank screen. Your idea is amazing, and then you start to paint it. You draw one line, you draw two lines, you draw four lines, and you could barely see your idea anymore. It's because there's too much contrast. Let's talk about textures a little bit. Textures are definitely the subtleties in a painting. So I just used flat textures for the ground, and then I would transform them into perspective. You can see when I laid down the texture, it wasn't just a square anymore, right? It was going in perspective so that the texture in the background is smaller than the texture in the foreground. Now in the beginning as well, I'm using reptile skin to texture this thing, but this painting is all about emotion. So how did the scales make you feel compared to the furry one? Was it hitting the emotion that I wanted it to hit with you guys? That's what I was thinking. If I was just to see this as a stranger, how would I feel about this? Would it give me that "aw" kind of feeling? A little bit, but not as much as I wanted. It didn't hit that emotional mark. So even though I'm spending a lot of time, as you can see, creating scales on this guy, you'll see that I end up going, nah, I don't want to do the scales. It doesn't have the emotion that I want, right? And then I start painting in fur. And then right away, oh, the furry little cheeks, the furry little paws. I don't know, it just made me go, oh, yeah, I like this. I like this. You know, it's just different. And you can see I am messing with photo textures a little bit. But in the end, I just painted it myself. You know, photo textures, they work a bit. But a lot of times, a painting doesn't need all those details. A lot of times, the best paintings are the ones where you're looking at it and you're going, wow, it's so simplified over here. It has no details there, but I know exactly what should be there. I know exactly how this would feel. You know, you see a painting of like some knights wearing armor in the dark. You can barely see them. You can barely see the armor, but then you see a little highlight and you know exactly what kind of material it is, like that kind of thing. Okay, and there you go. There's the painting. And so now what I want to do was I just want to take some questions. I got about 10 minutes before I head to the airport. And yeah, before the first question, I want to say, you know, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much for coming out and coming to this talk. You know, I had no idea there'd be that many people. It's wonderful. So the question is, what would you tell somebody that perhaps is intimidated by other people's success? Maybe somebody younger, maybe somebody, I don't know, in a different place, things like that. Well, I live in Toronto. I was raised in Toronto. So when the internet started and everything, and the blog started, and it was really cool, and all these amazing artists from the West Coast, from California, started making blogs, I totally felt like that person, like going, whoa, what's going on over there? That's so cool. Wow, how do you guys do that? And wow, they're working on all this cool stuff. And I'm here in Toronto. You know, I definitely relate to your question. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to compare yourself. Stay in your lane. That's what I would say. The main thing is what? The main thing is seeing how everybody is doing, or is the main thing to have a successful art career in your life? Right? If it's the second one, then let's do the things that will get you towards that second goal. So what are those things? That's putting in the time, putting in the effort, and constantly rethinking and trying to use your logic. Am I going in the right direction? Because you could use all the time and effort in the world and you're going in the wrong direction. Right? If you're only thinking about those things, well, the other cool thing is that each one of those things, how much time you use, how much effort, and are you trying to use logic, all of those things are in your control. What your friend does is not in your control. So don't think about that person and what they're doing, really. You know, like, especially I still live in Toronto. I have all these friends that work at Pixar or Marvel or whatever. And then the new movie comes out and they have this big, huge wrap party and they're on the red carpet and stuff, taking all these cool pictures. Of course, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I kind of wish I was there. But then when I talk with them, they're like, oh, wow, you know, you went to Florence, you went to Mexico or whatever. They feel the same way. There is no perfect scenario, and you will always find a reason to kind of like somebody else's life more than yours. So there's no point. Thank you for your question. Okay, so it's a little soft. I can't hear too well, but I think the question is, how do you start a new painting? You know, where do you go for the inspiration, the creativity, like that kind of thing? Well, one thing that's interesting is that you could pretty much look at anything to get inspiration for anything else. Just like when I was showing those Sergey paintings, the ideas that I got from those are not even close to what he painted. Right? So as long as you have your objective in mind, maybe your project is dinosaurs. Right? So I'm looking into this room and I'm looking at what I'm imagining is like a bunch of dinosaurs. One dinosaur is kind of fiddling with his hands, because that's what I see on the right-hand side. And he's just kind of looking, and he doesn't really, one dinosaur is maybe yawning and just hang out and, just looking off in the distance. And I'm just creating the story by kind of extrapolating what I see on the screen where you guys are. And maybe, so I start to create this idea that maybe there's one dinosaur on trial. That's you. And then you got all these other dinosaurs around you just going, oh shit, this guy's in trouble. And that's the painting, maybe. I don't know. But so what I do is I respect the time to gather ideas. A lot of times when you're doing freelance, you feel like, okay, it started, the job has started, I need to start drawing. But that's not the first step. The first step is to just think, to look, think, gather ideas, keep thinking about that topic usually I try to do that for a whole entire day. I could draw, but I'm not going to. Right? And then the next day I start painting and drawing. It comes out way easier because the ideas are almost going to burst out of my head at this point, right? Because I was looking for ideas for a whole entire day and I'm not drawing any of them down. It's kind of weird and counterintuitive. I'm like, don't draw. That's how you come up with a good painting. But that's how you kind of do it in the beginning. All right, I have time for maybe one or two more questions. Okay, so how do I kind of think about the biology of a creature? Pretty much. Everything in the world, pretty much, is designed for a purpose. So if you see a creature with molars everywhere, it probably eats vegetation. If you see pointy teeth, it probably eats meat, because everything is for a function. Right? So I think about what is the function of that creature. And hopefully, like in this case, we made it interesting, right? The creature digs in the dirt. So that's kind of cool. Let's expand this idea a little bit more. The torso is a part of the body that's, a lot of people get confused. They don't know what to do with it. But the torso can do only a few things. It could bend forward and backwards, right? It could go like this. It could go like this, sideways, and it could twist. That's it. Right? For a normal human torso. So then I would go, okay, well, I just need it to move forward, backwards, side to side, and twist. So maybe instead of muscles and bones and things, maybe it's kind of like an accordion, this creature. It's kind of like an accordion, right? And the very bottom of it can swivel, like the hips. So the accordion can go like forward, backwards, side to side. And then, okay, what kind of anatomy kind of does that? maybe like a caterpillar. So then maybe I start using that and go, okay, well, what would a caterpillar anatomy look like on a vicious, giant, 2,000-pound animal, like a bear? And then all of a sudden things get interesting. So it's about the functionality. And yeah, I used caterpillar as an example, but I also used an accordion as an example, playing music, right? You can use non-organic things as well. When you watch, if you watch Toy Story 3, for example, that's one of my favorite animated movies. Mr. Potato Head becomes Mr. Tortilla Head for a moment. That was really interesting because all of a sudden his anatomy is a tortilla. What kind of things can you do now that you couldn't do as a potato? Right? So a tortilla is not biology, it's not anatomy. Right? So it's really, you go to the essence of anatomy, which is functionality. Think about the functionality of it. Muscles are just like cables. They just pull things, and they turn things or whatever. They twist things. That's all you need to know. So if you know the functionality, then you can start making up muscles to complete those functions. Okay, since that was the last question, I want to tell you a tiny little story before I leave, okay? And that's how I started. So when I was a little kid and I wanted to do art, my parents were like, great, love art, keep going, little Bobby. I grew up a bit. I was a teenager. I still like to paint and draw. I said to my parents, I want to be an artist. What do you want to do when you grow up, Bobby? I want to be an artist. Okay. Art is great as a hobby. Become a doctor, become a lawyer, become a business person. It's like, okay, fine. So when I wanted to be an artist, they said no. I went to school to become a business person. I hated it, dropped out in the first half year. I brought in watercolors into my accounting class, pastels into my math class. I failed everything. And when I got the report card, my mom looks at it and she's like, what does E mean? Does that mean excellent? I said, no. E was my grade. It means I failed. And she said, well, I hope you know what you're doing because it looks like you're going to art school. I said, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to apply for the hardest art school in my area, which is Sheridan College at the time. And so I applied for the toughest program, which was animation. Back then, it was 6% of people got accepted. So I applied, and then did I get in? No, I didn't get in. So I took the program that anybody can get into, which is Art Fundamentals. If you had eyes, you could pretty much get into this course. So the great thing about this course is that the top 5%, they get into the animation test automatically for the next year. So I worked my butt off, worked super hard, and got into that program. And was I the best? No. But by the time I graduated, I worked so hard that I graduated at the top of my class. Did I get a job after? No, I didn't get a job. I couldn't get a job. It was 9/11 just happened, and nobody's getting hired, across the border in the US. Okay, great. I took a job, my old job, which is working in a toy company, worked on my stuff. Oh, and sorry, I had a backup plan, which is to go into computer animation because that was booming. That was just starting. And then did I get into that? No, I didn't get in. Even though I graduated at the top of my class, my portfolio, for some reason, wasn't good enough to get a spot. So I got my old job back, doing toys or whatever. Worked on my portfolio, got into computer animation, graduated computer animation at the top of my class. Could I get a job? No, I couldn't get a job. I still couldn't. I ended up working at a television studio, but I wasn't doing art. I was the computer guy. My position was data manager. They would call me the FTP monkey. Which, it's out of love, so I don't care. It was great. It was fun. I had a great time. But that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be a drawer. I wanted to work in movies as a concept artist. So I would take all these jobs, all these little crappy jobs that wouldn't pay me very much at all. As long as the topic was towards something that I wanted, like characters, creatures, whatever, I would take it. And it's sometimes, in the beginning, you're almost working for free. But I would try to give them that $10,000 job, thinking that they're paying me $10,000 when in actuality they were paying me like $10 or something, like $100. Right? Because my idea was, if I keep showing $10,000 jobs, I will get a $10,000 job one day. So that's what I did. And I got to the point where I got so many crappy jobs that I was working 8 hours at night and then 8 hours in the day, traveling for like an hour and a half each day, very little sleep. I was going at 100%. Till the point where I knew if I quit my job, I saved up enough money, and I have been getting enough little crappy jobs to live a really, shitty life. But I'll be alive. I can pay for all my stuff. So then I quit my job. I told my boss, I said, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't my goal. I want to become a concept artist. I'm going to go full-time freelance. Right? And actually, the week before this, there was another no, kind of, which was I was frustrated trying to be an artist. I emailed two of my favorite artists. One is Dean Yeagle, draws amazing, beautiful, cartoony style, and then Steven Silver, which is one of my best buddies now, but at the time I didn't know him. He was a successful artist in California. I emailed both of them. Dean Yeagle wrote me back, and he wrote, great job, keep going. You're doing the right thing. Because what I wrote to them was, listen, I love your stuff. I look up to your art so much. I've been trying to become an artist for the last while, and nothing is happening. I just wanted to ask you, am I wasting my time? If you tell me that, yeah, I should choose something else, I won't be upset. I just want to know. I respect your opinion. I just want to know. And so Dean Yeagle wrote me back and said, great job, keep going. Steven Silver wrote me back and said, give me your number. I want to call you. This is before Skype, right? So long distance is still very expensive. I give him my number. And then did he call? No, he didn't call. So fast forward to quitting my job. I'm ready. I don't care. Okay, Steven Silver didn't call. I'm quitting my job anyways. And I tell him I'm going freelance, full time. That's my last day. I go home. I try to turn on my computer, and my computer is now broken. The day that I say I'm going to go freelance full time, my hard drive was going work. It wasn't working. It was physically not working. And back then there was no USB drives. There was writable DVDs that cost $60, and you can only write it one time. So I didn't have backup. Lost my whole portfolio. The day that I went freelance and quit my steady job. So of course, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, wow, this couldn't be a coincidence. Life is trying to tell me something. It's trying to tell me, get my job back. I'm not supposed to be an artist. But then I thought to myself, wait a second. My whole life has been filled with no's. Every time I tried to do something, the first answer was no. And then I went on and I kept doing it and I got it anyways. And I feel like when I hear a no, I don't hear a no anymore. I just hear not right now because I've gotten so many no's. And then I started thinking back to animation when I learned how to throw a baseball, animate throwing a baseball. You don't grab a baseball like this and then you just push forward and you throw it. That's a bad animation. That ball is not going to go very far. What you need to do is you need to grab that baseball and bring it back a lot. And then you throw it as hard as you can and it'll go way further. And that's what life was doing to me. It's been pulling me back all this time. And as long as you hold on, as long as you don't stop, and you're still there, and you're still working hard, no matter how much life pulls you back, at a point, life will give up, and it'll say, okay, Bobby, you're not stopping, so let's just let him go. And then that ball is going to go so far, way further than if you never had any difficulties in your life at all. The people that we look up to are the ones that have amazing stories of difficulties and never giving up, even though everybody else would have at the time. And that's when I realized that all these no's in my life, and any no that you might have gotten in your life, or any difficulties, that's really, we just gotta believe that that's life testing us to see how much we truly want it. And if you believe in your heart that, yeah, I don't care, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to try harder. That no is never a no, it's just not right now. I'm going to try in a different way. I'm going to come back every time until I get it. Then that's when life opens up the doors and lets you in, and you almost all the time you achieve this next level. A level that you never even got to before. It's usually because the signal is like one of these bad luck things that happens to you to test you, to see if you really deserve what's going to come to you. And once I realized that, guess what happened? The phone rang. Ding, ding. Hello? Hey, little buddy, Steven Silver. He talked with me for an hour, just telling me, you know, it's all about your heart. That's what gets you to your dreams. That's what gets you to where you want to go. And he talked to me for over an hour, convincing me of this. And then towards the end of this hour, you know, on one of my darkest days, I go to him, you know, you changed my life today. How could I ever repay you? And he said to me, well, when it comes to a point in your life, Bobby, when you can give back to somebody else, give back to somebody else and we'll call it even. And then that was the end of the phone call. What an awesome guy. So I want to just say, like, if this talk has helped you guys in any way, when it comes to a point in your lives where you could give back to somebody else, you give back to somebody else and then we'll call it even. Okay? So I hope you like the presentation, and thank you so much for showing up. So when Imaginism Studios started, it was just a few artists living and working in one house. No distractions, just art. Anytime, day or night, you can find somebody up, somebody to paint with. Our artistic skills grew extremely fast as a result. We loved the experience, so we created the Schoolism LAKEHOUSE 30-day in-house workshop. The Schoolism LAKEHOUSE is a unique and exciting opportunity for a hand-picked group of 4 applicants, just 4, to be trained by professional artists in an inspiring and stimulating lakeside environment. If selected, you and 3 other applicants would be invited to move into the Schoolism house in Saint-Julien, Quebec, just outside of Montreal, Canada, for 30 days. Once there, you will follow the training program designed by Imaginism Studios for our new artists. You will become the personal apprentices of our senior artist, Thierry Lafontaine, affectionately known as T, as you learn drawing, painting, and digital painting from T and a special guest instructor. Past guests have included Nathan Fowkes, Steven Silver, Carcamo, Andrea Blasic, and many, many more. The Schoolism Lake House is dedicated to the training of concept artists based on the principle of learning by doing. For 30 intense days, you will live with T and acquire the essential art skills, daily practices, and philosophies that lead to a successful career as a concept artist in today's industry. Go to schoolism.com/house.php for more info.
Focus on learning. Think as much as do while you're here.
You really get a solid foundation of the basis of drawing. I mean, after this you can truly draw everything.
I just knew this part of myself that I never have even imagined that I could get into, like how awesome I can be, if I just believe.
So I'm sure that when you start at this Schoolism course, enjoy it. It goes by very quickly.
Try to focus as much as possible on art right now. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It's only 30 days.
Take care of this beautiful house. Keep it clean and keep it organized. You're gonna live here for 30 days and it's gonna be magic.
T gets in my head and say you are as good as you think you can be.
T is the best part.
T, you changed my life. You did it.